Are you ready to meet the most ridiculous bird that has ever existed? Well, maybe it's not so ridiculous when you see its pictures, but what if I told you this bird could have been hunted to extinction in less than 20 years? Welcome the dodo bird. Dodos were white-throated rails from Southeast Asia that flew over to the island of Mauritius about 136 kilometers off the coast of Tanzania in East Africa, where they evolved into an endangered flightless subspecies after arriving. No predators could reach the island, so they didn't need to fly to escape danger. So they evolved to walk on the ground. But this was not very advantageous because, in order to fly back to Southeast Asia, they would also have to learn to fly again. But since there were no predators on the island, dodos never worried about being eaten, and even when humans came to the island, they weren't afraid at all. Dodo birds were discovered by humans in 1507 and were described as silly, clumsy creatures that did not fear people at all. In fact, they say the Portuguese sailors who discovered them tried to catch some alive to take back with them to Europe. But the birds were so unafraid that they couldn't get close enough to grab one. The dodo bird was completely unique. Its ancestors were small songbirds that grew to be almost the size of an ostrich. Because there were no predators on the island, they developed into massive birds, up to 1 meter tall, weighing up to 22 kilograms with a wingspan of 2.5 meters. It is believed that the dodo laid its eggs in tree hollows until humans arrived on the island, and then moved to underground nests. But unfortunately, none of these nests have survived to this day. What caused the extinction of the dodo? Was it the famous sailors and settlers who came to the island, or was it something else? Let's find out. There are 3 reasons why dodos went extinct: hunting, exotic animals, and habitat destruction. Let's start with hunting. When the Dutch settled on the island in 1638, the dodos became their source of meat. Sailors reported that the dodos were delicious, and so every time a ship arrived at the island, the crew would kill as many dodos as they needed for their journey. However, scientists believe that hunting alone was not the reason for the extinction of the dodos. After all, even when the Dutch began to purposefully hunt the dodos, they managed to survive for another 100 years. So what other dangers did dodos face? One of the biggest threats to dodos was that humans brought various animals to the island that had no natural enemies there. Pigs, dogs, cats, and rats that escaped from ships or were specifically brought to the island by sailors and settlers destroyed dodo nests and ate their eggs. And since dodos laid their eggs on the ground, they were easily spotted and eaten by these animals. That's right, dodos couldn't reproduce, and this was the main cause of their extinction. But there was also another problem. Although Mauritius was covered with forests when the first people arrived there, by 1681 most of the island was deforested because people cut down trees to build settlements and grow crops. As a result, dodos lost their homes and food, and the birds that didn't fly away died of hunger or were simply killed by people. There is an opinion that dodos could have survived if they had mated with white-throated rails that flew over from Southeast Asia. But most likely this would have led to the disappearance of the dodo subspecies, but not the extinction of the species itself. So what happened to the dodo bird? The dodo bird went extinct less than a century after humans first arrived on the island. And although we don't know exactly when the last dodo bird died, it was most likely between 1662 and 1681. At first, it was assumed that the last dodo bird was killed in 1662 by a sailor, but this is just a legend, and although the dodo bird is no longer with us, its legacy still lives on. The dodo bird has become a powerful symbol of the negative impact of humans on the environment and biodiversity loss. It's a reminder that even large and seemingly indestructible creatures can go extinct if they lose their habitat or are hunted by humans. Although the story of the dodo bird is sad, it also teaches us an important lesson about the importance of protecting our planet's fragile ecosystems and the creatures that live there. If we learn from the mistakes of the past, we can help ensure that no other species have to suffer the same fate. I think it is time to talk about what we can do to prevent such tragedies from happening in the future. But before that, I want to tell you another story about a similar bird that also went extinct because of people. Want to hear it? Okay, listen carefully. In New Zealand, the first people arrived around the year 1300, bringing with them rats that were most likely brought to New Zealand by the ship's crew. Rats quickly spread across the island and caused huge damage to local wildlife. They ate the eggs of native birds, including those of the moho bird. Moho was a large flightless bird that resembled an ostrich. It was about 2 meters tall and weighed about 30 kilograms. Like dodos, mohos had no predators in their habitat, so they didn't need to fly to escape danger. Over time, they evolved into large flightless birds, but unlike dodos, mohos weren't stupid and clumsy. They were strong and fast. Even though they couldn't fly, they could outrun any human. When the first people arrived in New Zealand, the mohos weren't afraid of them at all. People say that a Maori could approach a sleeping mola mola, stroke its feathers, and the bird wouldn't even try to defend itself. But everything changed when the rats arrived. First, the rats stole the mohos' eggs, and then they began to attack the birds themselves. Strong and healthy mohos could fight off these attacks, but they couldn't protect their eggs. And so the moho population began to decline rapidly. And even though people didn't hunt the moho on purpose, they still played a big role in the bird's extinction. After all, it was the people who brought the rats to the island. It took the rats only 40 years to wipe out the malumala from New Zealand. The last known specimen was shot in 1896, and today there is not a single malumala left on Earth. Well, now let's talk about what we can do to prevent such tragedies from happening in the future. Although we can't bring the dodo or mola mola back to life, we can learn from their mistakes and protect other endangered species. Here are just a few things we can do. First, we need to reduce our consumption of resources. If each of us tries to use less energy, water, and other resources, we'll put less pressure on the environment. Second, we need to recycle more. If we recycle more paper, glass, metal, and plastic, we'll need fewer resources and produce less waste. Third, we need to plant more trees. Trees absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen, which is essential for our survival. Plus, they're home to many animals and plants. Fourth, we need to support organizations that protect the environment and endangered species. By donating money or volunteering our time, we can help save animals and their habitats. And finally, we need to educate ourselves and others about the importance of protecting the environment. The more people understand the problems facing our planet, the more likely we are to take action. These are just a few things we can do to protect the environment. But remember, even small actions can make a big difference. So next time you turn off the lights, recycle or plant a tree, remember that you're not just helping the planet, you're also helping to protect the amazing animals that share it with us. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, you can watch another video on your screen right now. See you later.